Okay, what you get when you watch the movie from, sorry, when you watch the video from YouTube last Monday. Okay, so today I would just like to continue on the remaining part of the chapter 5. Okay, so because when it comes to understanding this concept of indifference curve, okay, so what it means by indifference curve. Okay, indifference curve is it measures your utility. Okay, higher utility, higher indifference curve. You can see here that it indicates higher amount of utility. So if you are at this curve, means you are gaining more utility compared to the lower indifference curve. Okay, but the main thing is that along the same indifference curve, the amount of utility will be the same. It's just different combination of x and y. Okay, but as long as you are on the same line, okay, the same curve, okay, that means the amount of utility will be the same. Okay, it's just that you are changing the combination of y and x. Okay, but as long as you are here on the same point or on the same line, okay, but utility can only increase if you move to a higher indifference curve. So how can you move to a higher indifference curve? Okay, means that if you want to increase from U10 to U30, okay, so one of the ways is the increase in income. Okay, because when your income increase means that you can consume more of X and more of Y, or the price of good X and good Y declines or becomes cheaper. That way you can gain, you can consume, or you can buy more of Y and X. Okay, so that is what is important for you to understand in chapter 5. Okay, first the definition of indifference curve. Okay, what it means by being on the same line of the indifference curve. Okay, so first is what is definition of indifference curve. So this is the definition. Okay, curve that represent combination of item that gives you the same amount of utility. Okay, so and then these are the assumptions. Okay, downward sloping, convex to the origin. Okay, and then what is MRS? MRS is marginal rate of substitution. So basically, MRS is just the slope of the indifference curve. Okay, if you recall the concept of opportunity cost, when you learn on the PPF, production possibility frontier. Okay, the one that you cover, I think in chapter 1 or chapter 2. Okay, so in PPF, you also have the concept of opportunity cost. How much of good Y you need to let go to increase one more of good X. So the term MRS basically is similar to the concept of opportunity cost. Okay, or in the specific term, we call it the slope, kecerunan. It measures the slope of the indifference curve. So the slope of the indifference curve is called MRS, marginal rate of substitution. So you can see this definition here. Okay, how much good Y you need to let go in order to increase more of X. Okay, just like the concept of opportunity cost. Okay, but when it comes to the concept of indifference curve, okay, for consumer, okay, if you want to measure your utility, okay, it's called the curve that measures your utility is called IC, or indifference curve, and the slope of the indifference curve is called MRS, marginal rate of substitution. Okay, and different IC shows different level of satisfaction. This is the one. The higher your indifference curve, the higher is your utility. And one of the assumption is that it cannot cross. Okay, because when the two curve intersect, okay, for example, you cannot have indifference curve, this indifference curve and this indifference curve intersect, because when you intersect, okay, you cannot actually determine what is the best combination of X and Y. Okay, but we're not going to discuss this concept in detail. Okay, so what is important for you to know is the definition of indifference curve, what it means by MRS, or the marginal rate of substitution, which is the slope. It measures the slope of your indifference curve. Okay, and then why it cannot intersect. Okay, so as long as you understand that it cannot intersect, why? Because when the two curves intersect, okay, because if you recall here, higher indifference curve means it's better for the consumer. Okay, if possible, everyone wants to be at U3, okay, not at U1, because U3 gives you higher indifference, higher amount of utility or satisfaction. Okay, but if the two indifference curve intersect, okay, you can see here that at this point you are at U1, okay, but U2 you are at C. So because by right U2 should be higher than U1, okay, but because it intersects, you do not know which one actually gives you the best level of satisfaction. Okay, so that is the simplest way to describe why indifference curve cannot intersect. Okay, so this is the idea of U3 is better than U2, better than U1. Okay, and then the shape of indifference curve for perfect substitute, the shape will be perfectly, I mean, it will be a straight line. Okay, not a convex like this. Okay, why? Because when you say perfect substitute, good that can be serve the same purpose. Okay, why straight line reflects perfect substitute? Because we recall just now the MRS, marginal rate of substitution, which measures the slope of the indifference curve, correct? Okay, but when your curve is not a straight line, but it's a convex curve, so the value of your slope changes. Okay, so your MRS here is not the same as the MRS here, not the same as the MRS here. Okay, so because the curve is not a straight line, so the value of the slope, okay, the keturunan of your indifference curve also changes from being at a higher point. As you move from this point to a lower point, okay, the value of MRS also changes. But for a perfect substitute, the MRS will be constant because, okay, because it is a straight line. So the slope of a straight line is also constant. Okay, the gradient or the slope, it will be constant. So that's why it fits under the perfect substitute. You can substitute good X or Y. The quantity of X or Y that you need to let go will remain the same. Okay, because of the indifference curve is a straight line. But if the goods are perfect complement, okay, so the shape of the indifference curve will be like an L shape. Okay, usually the example will be like, you know, left shoes, right shoes, meaning goods that you must use together. Okay, you cannot use one at a time. Okay, so you can only move to a higher level of indifference curve if you consume the same, if you can get most of the goods at the same time. Okay, so that is perfect complement. Okay, just some of the simple example that you can find. Okay, and then also covered in the previous video is on the budget line. Okay, so whenever we talk about economy, okay, one of the concepts that we need to understand is about equilibrium. Okay, so in chapter 3, you learn about the demand and supply equilibrium. So what is equilibrium in demand and supply? When demand and when the demand curve is intersect or equal to the intersect with the supply curve, then you can get what is the equilibrium price, what is the equilibrium quantity. That is demand and supply. Okay, but when it comes to consumer, you as a consumer, when are you at equilibrium? Okay, so whenever you go and you do your shopping, okay, you have some amount of money in your wallet and you go out to do shopping. So by the time you finish doing your shopping, you spend some amount of your money. Okay, you get some goods and services. So how do you define that you are at equilibrium? When after you do your shopping. So that is what you need to understand about budget line first. First, we discuss about what is indifference curve, okay, which is a curve that shows different combination of X and Y that gives you the same amount of satisfaction or utility. Okay, so, and then you also must learn this concept of budget line. Budget line is basically just a simple linear graph, okay, that shows you the connection between the quantity of good X and price X and the quantity and price of good Y in relation to your income. So basically in a two-dimensional diagram, okay, we assume only two goods lah, good X and good Y. Okay, how much you spend on good X plus how much you spend on good Y must equal to the income that you have. So meaning that if you have $10 or 10 ringgit, okay, you must use that 10 ringgit to buy a certain quantity of X and certain quantity of Y. or all x and 0y, or all y and 0x. But it must always equal to the income or money that you have in your bank or in your wallet lah. Okay, so and because it is a straight line like this, okay, so the slope of your budget line, okay, recall that the function of the budget line is equal to I, the income must be equal to the amount money spent on X plus the amount of money on good Y. Okay, so the slope depends on the prices of good X and the good Y. So for budget line, the slope is calculated calculated as PX over PY. Okay, the ratio of good X divided by the price of good Y. Then you can calculate what is the keturunan or the slope of the budget line. Okay, but one thing that you need to actually add, basically, whenever you calculate the budget line slope, actually there should be a negative sign here. Okay, why negative? Because the budget line is downward sloping, so the gradient will always be negative. Okay, so although that the if you calculate mathematically the slope will be negative value. Okay, although in the formula here it only mentioned the ratio of x, price x over py, but when you calculate, okay, because the budget line is downward sloping, so the gradient will always be negative lah. Okay, so but the main thing that you need to understand, what is budget line, okay, and what is the equation of budget line. Okay, how do you construct budget line? Okay, so your budget line is just a combination of it shows the amount of X and Y that you can buy given your income. Okay, so for example, point A means you are not spending all of your money. Some of your, let's say you have 10 ringgit, maybe you only spend 3 ringgit. 7 ringgit you put aside as saving. But the one that you want to focus is the one on the budget line. Budget line means you spend all of your income, some of good X and some of good Y. C is not attainable, meaning you cannot achieve good point C because your expenditure is more than your income. Okay, so A is you spend less than your income. B is you spend any point along the line, along your budget point line, means that you are spending all of your money to buy some X and some Y. Okay, for example, at this point here, okay, it's clear that you are spending all of your money on Y and 0 on X. Okay, the same thing here. If you are at this point here, you are spending all of your money on X and 0 on Y. Okay, so any combination along the line here means that you are spending some of your money on X, some of your money on Y. Here you are spending more on X, less on Y. Here you are spending more on Y and less on X. Okay, we can go. So you get the point here. So the budget line is just a combination of how much X and Y that you spend given the money that you have. Okay, so and then the income. Okay, so expenditure on X plus expenditure on Y equals to the income that you have. Okay, so I think this is a very simple equation or function that you need to understand. Okay, and then budget line can also changes due to the changes in your income. It can shift to the right. Okay, sorry. So budget line can shift to the right. It can also shift to the left. Shift upward or rightward means there is an increase in income. Shifting to the left means your income decrease. Okay, so but the shift in income will cause your budget line to shift parallel or selari. Okay, but if it's caused by, let's say, the change in the price of X or the change in the price of Y, then your budget line will only change 1 point at a time. So I think this is also easily to be understood, because when you talk about the graph itself, okay, remember that the function of your budget line, okay, is subject to the price of X and price of Y. Okay, so if the income that changes, then the budget line will shift parallel to the right or to the left. Okay, but if the one that changes is only the price of X or price of Y, here you can see that, okay, clearly that a fall in price of X will make X become cheaper. So more of X can be bought, meaning you can buy more X with the same amount of income. Price of Y does not change. Okay, so the changes in the shape of your budget line, okay, depends on two factors, whether income changes or the price of X or Y that change. Okay, so if both of price of X and Y changes, you need to know how much Y and X change by how many percent. If they change at the same percentage, then the effect will be the same as shifting to the right or to the left. So I think this one you can experiment on your own. So basically, this point here, okay, because the function of your budget line is I income equals to PXX, okay, PX, the price of X multiplied by quantity of X plus the price of Y multiplied by the quantity of Y. So by definition, this point is equal to income over PY, okay? Meaning that you spend all of your income on good Y. So if you want to know what is this quantity here, it will be equal to I over PY. Your income, let's say your income is 10 ringgit, okay? The price of Y, let's say, is $2 or 2 ringgit. So 10 divided by 2 is 5. So this will be 5 unit of Y, okay? And this point here, okay, if this is the original curve, the green line is the original curve. So this will be I over PX, income over the price of good X. So if your income, let's say, is $10 and the price of X, let's say, RM5, 5 ringgit. So 10 divided by 5, you will get 2. So this quantity, if you want to know what is the intersection point, how to get the intersection point between in your budget line, just simply, as long as you know what is your income, what is the price of Y and X, you can calculate the intersection point and you can construct your budget line directly. Okay, so here will be I over PY, this will be I over PX. This is also I over PX, okay? But why does your budget line shift to the right when there is a decline or fall in price X? Because you can see that when how to calculate the intersection point, I over PX. So if P of X, the price of X decline, so when this fall, this value will become higher. Income divided by, let's say previously the price of X is 5 ringgit. So 10 over 5, you get 2. So let's say now the price of X changes from 5 ringgit, drop to, let's say 2 ringgit. Okay. So 10 divided by 2, you will get 5. So that's why the curve will shift upward only on the x-axis if the price of X fall. Okay, you can see from 2 change to 5. Okay, from the price of X from 5 ringgit now drop to 2 ringgit. Okay, so income remains at 10 ringgit. So 10 divided by 5, you get 2. 10 divided by 2 ringgit, you get 5. Okay, so you can see how you can actually shift your budget line, okay, depending which of the price that changes. Okay, but if the income changes, okay, if the income changes, but the price of X and Y does not change, so because again, okay, if you recall just now, the formula to calculate the intersection point is income, I over PY for this point. This will be I over income divided by the price of X. So if income changes, price of X and Y remain constant, meaning unchanged. So increase in income will definitely make both value increase. If income increase, so I over PX and I over PY and I over PX, both will shift at the same percentage or same value. So that will cause your budget line to shift to the right if income increase, but if income decrease, it will shift your budget line parallel or salary to left. So that is what you learned before lah. Okay, and consumer equilibrium is achieved when the budget line is tangent. We use the word tangent. Tangent means it will not cross, but it just touch on the one point of your budget on your indifference curve. That is what tangent means. Okay, you can see that on this budget line here. Okay, the word tangent means there is, so this is your indifference curve. So it just barely or merely touch on one of the point on the indifference curve. It cannot cross. Okay, it cannot. You cannot say that. I mean, if this budget line, let's say, cross this line, so this does not mean tangent. Okay, tangent means the line only touches, okay, any point of the indifference curve by not crossing the indifference curve. So in this scenario, consumer is at equilibrium at point E. Okay, because at point E, at this budget line, it is tangent only at point E. Okay, from U2. Okay, at indifference curve U2. Okay, given this budget line, okay, and equilibrium is achieved at point E. Okay, so what does this mean? Consumer equilibrium is the tangency point at which the slope of the IC equals to the slope of BL. IC means indifference curve. BL means budget line. So in other words, point E means, okay, let's say if you recall from chapter 2, demand and supply, you see that equilibrium is when QD is equal to QS, okay, and if you plot in a simple diagram, okay, when the two curves intersect, okay, when the 2 points intersect, this is the equilibrium point, okay. But when it comes to consumer equilibrium, when the two graphs intersect, okay, intersect means the two graphs touches, okay, each other on this tangency point. So what this mathematically means is that the slope of the indifference curve, okay, recall what is the slope of the indifference curve just now? The slope is measured by MRS, okay, or marginal rate of substitution. That is the slope of the indifference curve. So this slope here is what we call MRS, okay, or the changes in Y, okay, divided by the change in X. That is the slope of the indifference curve, okay. But then, so the slope of indifference curve is the MRS, marginal rate of substitution, equals to the slope of BL. What is the slope of budget line just now? Okay, we already discussed this concept. Okay, the slope of budget line is this one, Px over Py, or negative Px over Py. Why negative? Because the line is downward sloping. So the slope of budget line is calculated as Px over Py. The slope of indifference curve is what we call MRS, marginal rate of substitution. Okay, so if I go back to this slide here, okay, so how do you calculate MRS? MRS is, okay, so this part, okay, this part, the plus X or this one is minus Y. So basically you are calculating the change in X. This one is this part will be the change in Y. Okay, because slope is about changes. Okay, perubahan X bagi dengan perubahan Y. Change in X over change in Y. So in indifference curve, we call the slope, the term that we call is MRS, marginal rate of substitution. Okay, so MRS measures the slope of the, so the formula will be change in X divided by change in Y. Okay, so the word change in economy, we can also call it marginal. Okay, the word change or the symbol change can also be called as MU or marginal, because we are talking about utility. Okay, because indifference curve, again, it measures the amount of utility, okay, or satisfaction. So the word marginal, we add the symbol U, marginal utility. So this change in X, the symbol change is what we call marginal. Okay, but because we are talking about utility curve, So we put it MU, marginal utility of X, okay, subscript X. So this part here, change in Y, we call it marginal, okay, because we're talking about utility curve, so marginal utility of Y, okay. So by definition, a slope is calculated as perubahan X divided by perubahan Y, or change in X divided by change in Y. Okay, so that is mathematics, whether it's indifference curve or any other curve. How do you calculate the slope? Slope is change in X over change in Y. So change in X in our context, because we are discussing about consumer indifference curve, we call it marginal utility of X. Okay, because this part change in X is also called as MUX. Okay, and change in Y, okay, is also called as MUY, marginal utility of good Y. So when you take MUX and MUY, mathematically, it will be MUX divided by MUY, marginal utility of X, divided by marginal utility of Y. So that will be the MRS. So when you talk about what is the slope of indifference curve called, it is called MRS. How do you calculate MRS? MRS is calculated as MUX divided by MUY, marginal utility of X divided by marginal utility of Y. So this slope is calculated as this MUX over MUY, which is called MRS, okay, marginal rate of substitution. Okay, so when you talk about equilibrium point just now, okay, the word equilibrium is when the two okay, when the slope of IC equals to the slope of BL. So we know that the slope of IC is called MRS, which is calculated as MU X divided by MUY. Okay, so this will be the slope of the IC equals to the slope of BL, which is PX over PY. Okay, by right, this is also negative. This is also negative. That's why in the equation, we don't put negative sign, because when both are negative, we can just eliminate both of the negative signs. Okay, because both of the curve, indifference curve, okay, the indifference curve here is also downward sloping. So the slope of the MRS will also be negative. Okay, budget line is also downward sloping. So the slope of the budget line will also be negative. So both are negative. So that's why we don't include the negative sign when it comes to calculating the equilibrium, because you can just eliminate both of the negative sign on left and the right side of the equation. Okay, so consumer is at equilibrium when this condition is fulfilled. MUX over MUY, which is the MRS, okay, or the slope of the indifference curve, is equal to the slope of the budget line. Okay, so MRS is equal to PX over PY. So when you want to calculate the equilibrium, so when does equilibrium occurs is when the budget line is tangent to the indifference curve. Tangent means it only touches one point. Okay, it does not cross. Cross does not mean tangent, and it does not mean equilibrium. Okay, so that is the concept that you need to understand in terms of course, at principle of economics level, you are not required to calculate the MUX, MUY, because that one requires differentiation, partial differentiation or pembezaan to derive the function. Okay, but at your level, what is needed is to understand how equilibrium is achieved, okay, and what do you need to do if you are not at equilibrium. Okay, for example, at point A. Okay, you know that equilibrium is at this point here, okay, when the indifference curve U2 is tangent at the budget line. So if you are at point A, so what does point A means? MUX over MUY is bigger than PX over PY. Okay, so when you are at this point here, okay, so this is important. Why at point A, MUX over MUY, or the slope of the indifference curve, is higher than the slope of the budget line, because at this point here, okay, how do you calculate the MRS? MRS basically is the slope, okay, perubahan X over perubahan Y. You know that when you are at higher point, usually the MRS, the slope will be higher at this point compared to when you are moving downwards. So that's why the slope at this point A is bigger than the slope of the budget line. Budget line slope remains the same. Okay, but at point A, we can say that, so you can compare. Point A means MRS is bigger than PX over PY. But if you, let's say I put here point B, okay, so this is point B, for example. So this is point A, this is point B. So point B means MUX over MUY will be lower than PX over PY. Okay, so but the main thing is, what if MRS is bigger than PX over PY? What do you need to do? Okay, so how do you achieve equilibrium? So when this is not equal, okay, because here you can see that it is more than, not equal to. If you want to make this one equal to, okay, because the original condition is this value is bigger than PX over PY. So how to make this value smaller? Because if this is bigger than this one, okay, you cannot change the price of X or Y, because that one is beyond the consumer control. Okay, the price of X and the price of Y is outside your control. If you go to the shop, you cannot ask the seller to change the price. So what you can do to be at equilibrium is to change this combination so that it will be equal to the ratio of PX over PY. Okay, so this one you cannot change. But what you can change is either this one, MUX, or you can change MUY, okay, or combination of both. So when at this point A, the slope of the indifference curve is bigger than the slope of the budget line. So to make this one smaller, because now it is bigger, so now you want to make this value smaller, so it can be achieved by, it can be raised if consumer buy more of X and less unit of Y. At point A, which it is buy more. Okay. Okay. This one not raised. This one is supposed to be lowered or reduced. Okay. You need to change in your slides or in your notes. Okay. Okay. So the main thing is that this one. Okay. So this one you need to change the sign to less than. Okay. So for this slide, when you are at point A, okay, MUX over MUY is bigger than PX over PY. So what you need to do is you need to lower this value, correct? Because now it is bigger than this. So this one you cannot change. So what you need to do is, in order to be equal, the higher value need to be lowered. Okay, so you can reduce this value by buying more of X. Why buying more of X will reduce the value? Because we understand that this one is marginal utility. The more you consume, the less MU will be, correct? So if this becomes smaller, so now the goal is to make, this value smaller. Okay. Now because you need to look this as one equation or one term. Okay. MUX. Okay. And then divide by MUY. Okay. So now your goal is to make this term smaller. So how to make this term smaller? One is to reduce this value, okay, to reduce MUX, and the other way is to increase MUY, because when this value becomes bigger, anything you divide by a bigger value, the overall value will also go down, okay? So, and the same thing here, if you reduce MUX, okay, if you reduce the numerator, you can also reduce this entire MUX over MUY can also be reduced. So you can reduce MUX by consuming more of X, okay? Because when you consume more of X, the utility of X, your MU will become smaller. How is this possible? We already discussed just now earlier. Okay, the more you consume, the less is your marginal utility. You recall from here, the more quantity you consume, marginal utility will decline. Okay, do not look at total utility. Okay, because what we are concerned is on marginal utility. The more you consume, the less satisfaction you get from the additional unit of the good that you consume. Okay, so that is common sense. Okay, you watch the movie the first time, okay, and then you watch the same movie second time, the amount of satisfaction that you get from watching the second time, the marginal utility you get from watching the movie the second time will be less than when you get to watch the movie the first time. Okay, so that is the argument here. So if you want to reduce MUX, okay, given that you are not at equilibrium here, okay, so in order to reduce MUX, you need to consume more of X. But for MUY, you can increase this value, because if this value increase, this ratio will also become smaller. So how to increase MUY is to reduce the quantity of Y lah, because vice versa lah, of the opposite. If you increase quantity, you get higher MU. So if you want to increase MU, you need to reduce the quantity. So that is what is explained here. Okay, when yang penting this one, the most important part is this one. If MRS is bigger than the ratio of PX over PY, if MUX over MUY is bigger than this, so you can achieve equilibrium by consuming more X and reducing Y. Okay, so the opposite will be true here. If MUX over MUY is less than this ratio, so how to make you at equilibrium again? To be at equilibrium, you need to increase this ratio, because now this value is smaller than the ratio. So to be at equilibrium, you must increase this ratio. Okay, so how to increase? We know that you can, in order to increase MUX over MUY, so this is just a simple logical mathematics, okay? You don't need to have a degree to understand this concept, okay? So if you want to increase this ratio, so what you need to do is to increase this value, MUX, or you can also reduce the denominator. You can increase the numerator, or you can reduce the denominator. That will increase this ratio value. So how to increase MUX? By consuming less of X. Okay, we agree that by consuming less, you will increase your MU. Or how to reduce MUY? By buying more of Y. Okay, but when you consume more of the same good, you will get less and less marginal utility. Okay, so this part is very important, these two slides here, okay, to understand how to be at equilibrium when the slope of the indifference curve is not equal to the slope of the budget line. Okay, so that's how you achieve that. Okay, so okay, again, this one, okay, ignore this. So this part is not really important. Okay, the main thing is that you are at equilibrium when the two ratios are equal. MUX over MUY is equal to PX over PY. The slope of the indifference curve is equal to the slope of the budget line. So that is what you need to understand, okay, on this concept there, okay. So what else is important? So we already discussed this. Some part of the slide may not be relevant to you, okay. So let me see what else that we need to cover before we go for the discussion, okay, on past years, some of the past years questions. Okay, so I think we have covered most of the part, okay. So what is important, okay, besides understanding the concept of equilibrium, okay, when does equilibrium occurs, okay, you need also to understand what happens to your budget line, okay. So what can cause your budget line to shift upward, okay, shift to the left, Okay, so these are the, okay, what is happening now? Sorry. Okay, so if you look at the okay, so on the other slides, this one, okay, the one that you watched from the last Monday video. Okay, so this is changes in the price of good Y, only good Y changes. Okay, so this one is only the price of good X changes. Okay, when the price of X decline or the price of X decrease. Sorry, the price of X decrease or the price of X increase. Increasing will cause the curve to shift to the left. Reducing the price of X will cause the graph to shift to the right. Okay, because I mentioned just now, this point is equal to I over PY. Okay, this point, the intersection point is income divided by PX. Okay, so when the price of X increase, the curve will shift to the left. If the price of X decrease, the curve will shift to the right. Okay, so the same goes to the good Y as well. Okay, the curve can also shift upward or downward depending. This one changes in income. Income increases, the curve will shift parallel to the right and vice versa. Okay, so changes in the price of X. You can see that here in your budget line here, only the price of X changes. Why? The point in Y remains the same. Only the budget line changes on the X axis. Okay, so when you add and whenever you change your budget line, you will have a different indifference curve. This is the original one, this is the new one, and this is also the new one. Okay, so in economy, when you intersect, when you join the point of all the equilibrium point A, equilibrium point B, equilibrium point C, meaning all of the equilibrium point on each of the indifference curve, you connect all the points, you call it price consumption curve. Okay, of course, this is not the main focus of the syllabus, but just to, in case if you find this term or this concept, okay, being asked in your notes or in your slide, I mean, in your test or your quiz, okay, please take note on this thing as well, okay. So, okay, so that's about it, okay, on chapter number 5. So we will do some partial questions on chapter 5. And okay, before that, okay, your first test is due on this coming Saturday, right? Today is
Friday.
tomorrow or Saturday? Saya pun dah lupa dah.
Friday.
Friday, is it?
Yes, tomorrow.
Okay, because yesterday, tomorrow they will. So for those, anyone of you are staying on campus? So how many of you are staying on campus? Cheng, Sun Yao, Suyo are on campus. Okay, because we get the notification that there will be a power outage. There will be no current tomorrow, electric supply from 9 to 12, from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. So meaning that you can only answer, if you use your own data, then there should be no problem. But if you want to rely on so you need to answer so do not answer within that time frame. Okay. So 9 to 12, meaning that do not start the test during this time. So the system is open, I believe, until evening, right? 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the evening. I can't remember what is the exact time.
Until 5 p.m.
Okay, so you have more than enough time. So, okay, so you can start doing the test once the electric. I think 9 to 12 is just the maximum time. Maybe the electric supply should be resumed maybe earlier than that. Okay, so but to be on the safe side, okay, only start answering when maybe half an hour after the electric supply has resumed. Okay, and beside that, you also have one small quiz. Okay, basically, if you look at the breakdown of your carry marks, beside the test and the assignments, the group assignment, you also have two small quizzes. One quiz, 5%. So what I will do, because the quiz one also overlaps with the topics that you will cover for test one. So I will also open the quiz one on the same day as tomorrow. So I will open the test around the same time, several hours or so, but I think you shouldn't take more than 10 minutes to answer the quiz. Okay, the quiz only has several questions, also multiple choice. So you can do the quiz immediately after you do your test. It only takes, I think, 10 to 15 minutes the most, okay, to answer quiz one. So the coverage, I think, will be similar, chapter 1 to chapter 3, or yeah, I think chapter 1 to chapter 3, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so I will open, so check your OL for the link for the quiz 1. So that will contribute 5% to your overall carry marks, okay? So the time, I mean, the test is not for, I mean, of course, it's not 1 hour. I think I will only open the test maybe for half an hour, but you can choose any time during that 5-6 hours when the system is open, okay? So anyway, I will upload I will open the system and let you know in your WhatsApp group, okay? Let me see. Okay, so last time around, we already discussed about questions on elasticity. So we continue where we stopped from the last question. So the last time we discussed was on question 25, okay, on the concept of elasticity. Okay, so, okay, wait, ada jawapan pula. Okay, because you know that I only use the same one, you know, because there are many past years questions that I can take, okay, but the one that we are using, I think is one of the easier one. I mean, one of the, most relevant to your discussion, okay, that matches the things that you might see in your quizzes or in your exam. Okay, give me a few. Okay. Okay, so question 26. Okay, when economist talks about utility, she is talking about, so basically this is just the definition on what is utility. Okay, so utility is all about consumer, okay, not about supplier. Supplier is about selling products, costs, wages, labor, economic profit. Okay, that one you talk about supplier side or producer side. Consumer, you talk about utility, satisfaction. Okay, so the best answer will be C lah. Okay. Okay, the law of diminishing marginal utility. Okay, we already discussed this just now. Okay, you can check back your slide. What does the word, the law of diminishing? Basically, the word diminishing is the key word here. So if you understand English, what diminish means, okay, so you should be able to pick up what is the correct answer. Okay, so I think the obvious one should be A lah. Okay, the marginal utility gained by consuming successive unit or additional unit will decline. Okay, so it matches the word diminishing lah. Okay, so this one utility is the greater means it will become higher and higher, which is opposite to what diminishing means. Okay. Also this one increase, also wrong. Okay, particular product. So this one what selling, which is not correct. Okay, because you're talking about seller. Okay, we don't talk about selling product here. Okay, consumer is in equilibrium if he or she derive the same of what? So when is in equilibrium? I mentioned just now in great detail. Okay, what is equilibrium? When do you achieve equilibrium in consumer utility? Okay, so equilibrium is achieved when your MRS or the slope of your indifference curve is equal to the ratio or the slope of the budget line, Px over Py. Okay, so that is when you are at equilibrium. Okay, the marginal utility per ringgit spent on each of the good consumed. Okay, the same marginal utility. So what D means? D means is basically, if you look at the video, the one that I linked yesterday, okay, you can see that the part which I drew on the this part here. Okay, when you cross multiply, it also means marginal utility per dollar spent. Okay, MUX per PX equal to MUY over PY. So this is what it means by marginal utility per dollar or per ringgit spent. Okay, so that is basically the same as what you being asked here lah. Okay, marginal is if the equilibrium is achieved when the same MU per dollar spent, which is MUX is over PX is equal to the MUY over PY. So this is what it means by marginal utility per ringgit or per dollar spent. Marginal utility per dollar spent is the same, okay, for each of the good that you consume. Okay, question 29. Okay, so it should be point answer D. Okay, so why is C is wrong? The consumer is better off to be at some point on high on a given curve as opposed to a point on the same curve. So this is what I mean by the definition of indifference curve. Okay, whenever you draw an indifference curve, okay, indifference curve means the same amount of utility. So whether you are at this point or at this point or at this point, the amount of utility will be the same. It's just you are changing the combination of X and Y. Okay, but point C here is wrong because consumer is better off at some point on a high curve, meaning here is better than the one lower, which is wrong. Whether you are here or here, okay, your utility will remain the same. Okay, that is the basic definition of utility curve, okay, or indifference curve. Okay, this one. Okay, so what does income equal to? So you recall just now, income is equal to, the slope, okay, the slope of the budget line is I over PY or I over PX. Okay, so that's how you calculate the intersection point or so the budget budget constraint cuts the horizontal axis at 12 unit. Okay, so if you draw this budget line, so this value is 12, okay, and cut the vertical at 20. Okay, so this is 20, the value will be 20 here. If the price of good X is 20 and the price of good Y is 12, what does income equal to? So how do you get 12 here? 12 is obtained by income divided by PX. So PX is given as 20. So I over 20 is equal to 12. So if you cross multiply 12 times 20, berapa? 240 lah. How can you get 480? Okay, it should be B. B or C? Okay. So it's the simple mathematical formula I showed just now. I over PX, I over PY. If this is 20, so the price of Y is 12. So 12 multiplied by 20, you get 240 also lah. Same. Okay, so it should be B. Okay. Okay, another similar question here. Okay, refer to the above question. Okay. Muhammad budget line AC, if the price of book decrease, okay, book is on the x-axis, Muhammad budget line will be what? Okay, AC is the original one. Okay, the middle one is the original one. If the price of book if price of book decrease, okay, so will your budget line shift upward or shift downward? Okay, so I mentioned just now, if the price decrease, I over PX, X decline, so the curve will shift upward to the right. Okay, so the answer should be C lah. Okay, AD. Okay, so this will be your new curve. Okay, AD. Okay, so the next question. Okay, question 32. Okay, so this is the one that we discussed just now, how to make your equilibrium equal. Okay, so MUX over PX is 8, MUY over PY is 4. Okay, so if you want to make them equal, is either you need to reduce 8 or you need to increase 4, or you need to increase this ratio or you need to reduce this ratio. Okay, so that you can be at equilibrium. So how to reduce 8 or how to increase 4? Okay, if you want to reduce MUX over PX, okay, meaning that you need to reduce MUX. Okay, if you need to reduce MUX, how do you do that? Okay, so you are choosing B, less of X. If you consume less X, what will happen? Are you going to increase or reduce MUX? Okay, so MUX over PX is 8, MUY over PY is 4. So if you want to be at equilibrium, one must go up and the other one must go down. Okay, so 8 is obviously higher than 4. So 4 need to go up, 8 need to go down. So for 8 to go down, okay, you cannot change PX. What you can change is the value of MU. So for this value to, if you want this ratio to go down, meaning MUX must also go down. So MUX can only go down if you consume more of X lah. Okay, meaning you need to reduce MUX. To reduce MUX, you need to consume more of X. And at the same time, you want to increase this ratio. So this ratio can be increased by increasing MUY. So how to increase MUY? By consuming less of Y lah. So it should be C. Okay. So we already discussed just now. If you want to increase MU, you need to reduce consumption. If you want to increase your marginal utility, you need to reduce the consumption. So it's the other way around. It's not to increase MU, you need to increase consumption. Okay, to increase MU, you need to reduce the consumption. To reduce MU, you need to increase the consumption. So now here for MUX, you want to reduce the MU. Why? Because when this becomes smaller, this ratio becomes smaller as well. Okay, so that's why the answer should be C. Okay, so I think that's it for our discussion so go and find some other questions on the internet or on the test bank that I send you. So these are the things that is important when it comes to chapter number 5, understanding how to achieve equilibrium, how to change the combination of X and Y like this. Okay, question like number 32 ni is very important for you to understand. Okay, why you increase, why you reduce. Okay, go back to the slide. Okay, I already explained on that. Okay, so I will also put up this video again on your OL. Okay, so that you can do this, you can refer back if you want to revise them. Okay, so I think that's it for today. Good luck for your test and quiz for tomorrow. So make sure your internet connection is secure when you start answering them. Okay, we do not want anyone to actually come out and say you cannot access this and that. Okay, so inshallah I'll see you on next Monday, okay, for our chapter 6 discussion on chapter 6. Okay, thank you. Assalamualaikum and good afternoon.
Doktor nak tak? Saya nak tanya
Apa dia?
macam mana dengan masa tambah yang saya minta.
Okay, yang pada tu okay, nanti saya update dalam WhatsApp nanti.
Okey, terima kasih doktor. Doktor, saya punya soalan tu kan yang pasal income tadi tu, yang income yang equation ni tak boleh guna ya doktor, yang PX QX tambah PY tambah QY tu.
Macam mana? Which one?
Yang soalan tadi income dia yang 240, yang betul yang salah tu 480. Sebab dia punya equation bukan income equal to PX QX.
Tak, sebab kita ambil dia punya point of intersection tu.
Oh, dia tak total
Bukan, kita ambil yang intersection point budget constraint punya tu, I over PY, I over PX tu. Okay. Sebab yang tu jumlah bila income bahagi dengan harga, dapatlah nilai slope tu dekat situ. Kan? So income 240 bahagi dengan 12 dapatlah kuantiti sama dengan 20. Kan, samalah dekat sini juga.
Kan? Okay. Confused. Terima kasih doktor.
Okay.
Doktor.
Iya.
Attendance ni tak scan.
Apa dia?
Scan attendance.
Kamu belum scan lagi? Dia buka kamu tadi dah 10 minit saya buka tadi.
Tadi sudah buat speed.
Hmm. Cepat.